Hello, everybody. So today I'm going to review another interface to ChatGPT, and that program is called FileGPT. So FileGPT, I'll show you the screen. And again, why should we review FileGPT? Because again, I'm interested in looking at generative AI or AI in general, or artificial intelligence and its application or its use in education, in particular in university education, in teaching and in learning, so research and also in classroom teaching. So FileGPT is another interface, and as we know, an interface is simply a so-called API or a framework that allows a person to interact with GPT in a way that GPT is originally not designed for. So this allows, like the other programs I've talked about, it allows you to upload a document and then to chat or to interact with that document in particular. So that's very powerful, especially for education, because you can upload a specific text or a specific chapter, a specific article, a specific book, if you will, and interact with that text, which does make it very useful for teaching and learning and research. Okay, so here we have FileGPT, and I've also spoken and reviewed other interfaces for ChatGPT, like Humata, ChatDoc, ChatPDF, Ask Your PDF, Shari AI, so on and so forth. There's a number of, if you will, competing products out there that are looking for our attention and hoping to satisfy our need or our desire to upload a document and to interact with it. So here's another one, FileGPT. So its extension is a bit different than most other extensions. It's the location, as you can see here, is FileGPT.app. So it's not .com or .net or anything like that. So it's FileGPT.app. If you Googled FileGPT, you would find this. You would come to this landing page. It says it's the most powerful GPT AI for your custom knowledge base. That's a strong claim. It says it could chat with many types of different files and get accurate responses. Oh, I like this part. Say goodbye to endless scrolling and searching and say hello to a smarter, more intuitive way of working with your documents. Yeah, and I do believe that it is a smarter way to work with your documents in the context of, if you will, generative AI. It is, yes. So here we have a kind of I guess it's a GIF, or it's a graphic or some kind of JavaScript, which is showing you how you could use this. And I'll come to that in a second. I will try it out, take it for a spin, as they say, for a test drive. And here are its features. It says it's built to work smarter, not harder. Check out our features. Okay, the feature says you can chat with everything. So it's a one-stop shop to interact with files, audio, videos, YouTube, and web pages. Now, I haven't tried that, so what I will show you is just simply chatting with a specific text document. I have not uploaded an audio document or a video document or a YouTube video, which I think you can do. I'm just not going to do that in this review, because I think that would be maybe too much. I can try that in a separate review. It does say it can support multi-formats, PDFs, text documents, and Microsoft Documents. It can support longer text. I think that's actually the thing that I am quite interested in, because the other programs like ChatDoc, Humata, ChatPDF, these typically are restricted to shorter chapters or journal articles. This program suggests you could upload longer text, and I will show you my attempt and show you the result. It said it has smarter content parsing. Okay. Extract text from handwritten document and analyze audio and video content. I'm not sure I know what that means, smart content parsing, but I think this has to do with non-digital documents in the sense of a handwritten document or in the sense of an audio document. Cross-source querying, this is also something I have not tried yet. The suggestion here is that you can query not just a single file, but multiple files. So that's very, very useful. I'll try that and test that, take that for a test in another review. And then it says it's an affordable solution. Okay, so what is it? And then it has a bunch of people here, 3 people, a data scientist, a manager, and a history major saying it's good. Frequently asked questions. Yes, it's a large language model. Is it free? Yes, it says absolutely. You can try out FileGPT for free, but you can pay for an account. What is interesting here is that here's the plan. Here's the different plans. And I'll click on this. And it basically doesn't tell you, I tried to look for it, doesn't tell you what the free plan includes, actually. It tells you you can go to these kind of pro plans, which is, I guess, quite expensive for the enterprise, for corporate pricing. But it doesn't tell you actually what the price is or what is allowed on the free account. Many of the other competitors do tell you that you have a certain amount of tokens or you have a certain amount of credits, or you have a certain amount of prompts, per day. This one doesn't tell you that. And if you go right back to that page here, it does say, you will have unlimited access to all your collections. So how long will I have access to it? It's basically saying it will never expire. Okay. And then why should I use FileGPT instead of ChatPDF or ChatDoc, which are 2 programs I've reviewed in the past? It's saying it's basically because it supports larger files, right, and longer text, right? That's good. And then of course, I've said that already. It supports PDFs and other types of documents. Okay, so let's sign in, and it brings you to this page. Okay, so. You can select new chat. If I selected new chat, what it allows you to do is it allows you to give your collection, because it's saying you can, which I haven't tried yet, meaning upload multiple documents into a collection and then chat with those multiple documents. I haven't tried that yet. I'll do that later, maybe in a separate review. But it allows you to, name a collection, then select the file, upload it, and then you would then create a collection. I have done that already in the sense that I have uploaded a chapter from an edited collection that I'm in, which is an intro to criminology book, which I'll show you in a second. I've also uploaded Plato's Republic book 1, and then also books 1 all the way to 5, and that's to test if it can upload longer documents, because Plato's Republic is actually 400+ pages. And I'll tell you ahead of time, I'll steal my own thunder. It was able to read all or access those 400 pages, which is I think is quite impressive, because other programs are not able to do that. And then I also uploaded an article that I've used as, if you will, a test document, Postmodernism or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism by Frederick Jameson, a famous article in political theory, political philosophy, cultural studies, in the humanities in general, arts. And so we'll look at that as well. So let's look at the first interaction that I had with it. And these are kind of interactions I had before I started this video, but I will also do one live just to give you a sense of how the interaction works with FileGPT. So you can see here, I had a interaction at the beginning of the month in June 6th, and I uploaded this. This is the book that my chapter is in. It's a book that's edited by my colleagues Shireen Hassan and Dan Lett, and it's called Introduction to Criminology, and it's an open education resource. So that's why I'm comfortable uploading my document, because this is freely available to anyone that has access to the internet. And my chapter is about, is here. It's basically about race and crime. And here are the different chapters that are, that you can access. So what I did is I downloaded this chapter. I went here to FileGPT. It's my own writing, so I consent to it being uploaded to this program. And then I began chatting with it. So once you upload it, immediately it gives you a kind of a abstract or a summary. It says, the document discusses the concept of colonialism, race, and racialization in Canada, explains how colonialism shaped the country, blah, blah, blah. It also discusses how people can be racialized, and so on and so forth. Yes, I think that's true. I don't think that's the best summary of what I wrote, because I think my summary is an attempt to explain at an introductory level the concept of race and racism. That would have been a much stronger abstract to say that this document is an attempt to explain race and racism and its, and its expression in the Canadian context. That would be a stronger one. It says some example questions you could query the document with. What's the role of colonialism? How is race used as a mental shortcut? And how is Stats Canada participating in a system of racialization? Those are all things I do talk about, but I don't know if those are the best questions, because I think a stronger, more general questions would be, what does the author mean by race? Or how is race and racism historicized or historically situated in this article in the context of Canada's history and a history of settler colonialism? That would be a stronger questions. So just straight off the bat, I'm not so sure if these are the best, if you will, leading questions to suggest to a user. So I write here, and then I ask, what are the key issues? Actually, that should be a question mark. That was the typo. What are the key issues? And it said, I'm sorry, your question is incomplete. Can you provide more context? I didn't like that. And then I write back, explain the key issues in its document. Okay, so it liked that. It didn't like the shorter sentence, but the longer sentence saying in this document. So I had to say to this document. Oh, but before I go any further, as you can see, it says it's a GPT-5. So it's accessing, this API is accessing GPT for you. It's paying for that access, but it's only using its own API or its own license to access GPT to the free version, the 3.5 version. But if you want, you can subscribe, and then you would be able to, of course, go to the Pro and get to the 4.0 version or the more advanced version. But that's not so important right now. It says here, so I asked the question, what's the key issues in this document? The document discusses the concept of colonialism, race, and racialization in Canada, explains how it shaped this country's legal system, uses a mental shortcut, Stats Canada, RCMP, Black Canadians. The document raises more questions about historical and present-day responsibility for acts of racism and colonialism and calls for greater awareness. Yes, I think that's true. But again, yeah, I mean, that's not a bad, if you will, explanation of maybe some of the key issues. But I feel almost the way in which it's organized is jumbled, because the way I organized my essay is actually, it begins by talking about overt institutional and systemic racism. So it's quite, if you will, logically organized. And this, when I ask what are the key issues, it doesn't really reproduce that for the user. So I'm disappointed in that. What forms of racism are discussed? So I'm here, this is the leading question, because I know I talk about overt, systemic, and institutional racism. And of course, it succeeds. It knocks it out of the park. It names all three right there. So that's very good. Thumbs up. It's able to identify the three main things that I talk about. I then say, what are the pros and cons of the arguments presented? It says, I'm sorry, your question's too broad. Okay. So then I say, what are the pros and cons of the arguments presented regarding overt racism? So I'm trying to be more particular, and then it's more comfortable with that, and it says, okay, here are the forms of overt racism that, that in terms of the argument, the pros, And then here are some of the cons. I thought it was interesting that it said focusing solely on overt racism can lead to a neglect of more subtle and specific forms of racism, because that is true, and yet it might be misleading in the sense that it's suggesting that by focusing on overt forms of racism, you somehow fail. And of course, that's not the case, because you should point out, if as from an anti-racist point of view, it might be useful. And I think that actually is, if you will, the voice of the article. So that might be a bit confusing for a reader who has not read the chapter. So again, I think, I'll step back for a moment. I think much of this interaction with, if you will, a specific document that you upload, a chapter from a book, it's really much more useful if you have read the chapter, so that you know the types of questions to ask the chapter, right? Because you're trying to, in a sense, use this format of kind of alternative reading as a way of querying a document, as opposed to following my narrative in the document, right? So I'm, as the user of this interface, I'm trying to, in a way, read this document that I wrote in a different way, right? I'm interacting with the document, not in this linear fashion, reading paragraph after paragraph the way I've set it up, but rather coming with my own set of, if you will, proclivities and framework, and saying, oh, what's this about, or asking what's that about, or tell me what are the key issues, and then having that conversation with, if you will, FileGPT as if you will, a mediator between me and the text. But I do think that mediation really is more valuable if you've read the text, because then the FileGPT, or this interface to the document, can actually help reveal things that you might not fully understand, and you'll be able to ask, if you will, more pertinent questions. So I asked that you wrote, quote, focusing solely on overt racism can lead to neglect of more subtle and systemic forms of racism, end quote. Can you expand and explain this further? So I'm actually saying, okay, you identified this as a con, as a negative. Can you elaborate? And then it does say, it gives a good answer, actually. I won't go into it too much, but it just says, yeah, don't forget that there are, if you will, institutional forms of racism or systemic forms of racism, which are, if you will, just as harmful as overt forms of racism. Okay, so I'm satisfied with that. I think that's not a bad interaction with the document. You can go on and on and on, of course. And I'll leave it at that. Let's look to Plato's Republic, Book 1. So here, just earlier, I uploaded Plato's Republic, Book 1. Okay, and then this is what it does, right? And I only uploaded Book 1 because that's what Humata and I think ChatDoc and ChatPDF were able to handle. They were not able to handle the whole 400-page text, and you couldn't upload it. So this was successful right away. Bang, right off it said, okay, this is a conversation between Socrates and Thrasymachus, and they discuss various topics, including the nature of justice, desires of different individuals, and the role of different professions. Thrasymachus argues that the unjust person gains more than both the just and the unjust, while Socrates seeks clarity and accuracy in defining justice. Yeah, I think there's more that happens in Book 1, but that's certainly part of it. So I'm not that happy, I think, with that summary. I think like the way it summarized my own chapter, it got some of the information right, but maybe it had difficulty having a more global picture of the chapter. Okay, but we do know that ChatGPT in general is good at understanding and reading and reflecting on things that you show it, right? Okay, but that's not what this test is. This test, I think, which is more interesting, is about whether it can read much, much longer text. So I did upload Plato's Republic, which is 425 pages, and it had no problems. It uploaded that text within a few seconds. And then bam, it said, here's the document summary. The document consists of excerpts from a conversation discussing various topics such as imitation, narrative style, education, dialectic, and the selection of rulers. The conversation explores the idea of imitating different characters and behaviors, the importance of narrative style and communication, the role of dialectic as the highest form of knowledge, and the qualities required for individuals who study philosophy and governance data. That's very vague. That's okay. I mean, it'd be better if it said, you know, this is basically a book written by Plato about these dialogues that Socrates, his friend, and his teacher had with all these different people that he encounters, right, in his daily conversations and debates with other philosophers. But that's not really, that doesn't really come out in this document summary. Okay, so again, maybe there's a failure of its ability to give these short one paragraph summaries. It has not bad example questions, but I'm not sure if these are the best questions. It's talking about the significance of narrative, the role of dialectics, and whether when somebody should study philosophy. What's the main argument that's presented in this book? Okay, it says the main argument, which is not explicitly mentioned, is the exploration of justice and the ideal state. Bam, that's very good. That is actually what, if you will, the whole book is about, right? All 5 books, right? Books 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or chapters, if you will. The book delves into the nature of justice, the construction of ideal state, the relationship between the individual. Yes, absolutely. So very good. Who is the author? Why did they write this book? The author, make that bigger. The author of this book, to make that smaller. The author of this book is not mentioned in the provided document. However, the book being referred to is The Republic by Plato, and Plato wrote this book as a philosophical dialogue to explore various topics. The main justice, morality, politics, ideal state. The main purpose is to present Plato's vision of an ideal society. Yeah, that's very good. I'm very happy with that so far. I understand that Plato talks to a lot of people. Who are his key interlocutors? And they say, okay, it depends. In the context of the document provided, which mentions Plato's work, The Republic, it's a bit weird the way it's skewing that clause. The main interlocutors in that dialogue is Cephalus, Polemarchus, Thrasymachus, Socrates, Glaucon, and Adeimantus. And Cephalus appears briefly in the introduction. Polemarchus is present in the first argument. Thrasymachus participates in the discussion in the first book, blah, 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 carried out by Glaucon and Adeimantus. Other individuals such as Lysias, Euthydemus, and Cleptophon are also mentioned, but have minor roles, which is true. I think that's not, again, not a bad, considering it's trying to summarize like all 5 books, right, which is quite a lot of dialogues. Why does Socrates debate all these people? To what end? So I'm trying to ask it very, very basic questions. And in some respects, maybe I'm trying to adopt the voice of, say, a student, perhaps an undergraduate student, and see if there's value in using, if you will, an interaction like this, an interface like this. The provided document does not explicitly mention Socrates debating people. Okay, so it's misunderstanding my question, right? So I write, does Socrates have a specific argument or point of view? Please help me understand his philosophy, right? So it says, okay, there's mention of Socrates and his philosophy, but it doesn't provide a comprehensive understanding of his specific arguments and point of view. But I can provide a general overview of Socrates' philosophy. Okay, so I'll stop there for a second. I think there's a failure here in understanding that these are, if you will, Socratic dialogues, very self-reflexive, very rhetorical, and sometimes highly charged debates between, if you will, real people, but also perhaps somewhat fictionalized by Plato. It's unclear. And I think maybe when I'm asking this notion, I'm identifying Socrates as a real individual. Does he have a specific point of view? The interface is unable to parse that information from, if you will, the text. So you can understand that there is such deep understanding, and yet I think at other times, as we know, generative AI shows that it doesn't fully understand your question or answers it in a way that's kind of off key. You know? It does, I think it says it can provide a general overview of Socrates' philosophy, which leads me to understand and to believe that it is in fact going outside of this document, right? Because now it's saying, it's perhaps referring, if I could do a bit of sleuthing, it's probably referring to different things that it's read in Wikipedia or other philosophy websites. Socrates was a philosopher. He was well known for Socratic method. He believed an unexamined life wasn't worth living, so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's good. So all of this is not necessarily from Plato's Republic document that I uploaded, but rather it's now going outside of the document, looking at things that it was trained on in its pre-training, and then coming back and giving me this kind of blurb, this historical blurb. So then I, again, try to take on this voice of the student. I say, I'm a student in a university philosophy course. I want to understand the key issues in this text. Please help me by outlining the key features of this text. Please cite specific key passages and explain their importance to me. Okay, so the text you provided is an excerpt from a conversation between Socrates and his interlocutor. It should be plural interlocutors. It touches on a variety of philosophical issues. It says the nature of philosophers. Okay, yeah. The role of philosophers, yes, absolutely. The importance of education, the pursuit of knowledge. These are the key features and passages that provide insight into Socrates' philosophy. I'm not so sure if that's true. These 4, if you will, blurbs that the machine has written, I'm not so sure if that's actually distilling the key aspects of Plato's Republic, because they are actually dialogues, right? The dialogues with Socrates and Glaucon, and they're having this debate about, or conversation about justice. And I'm not so sure, and it's this kind of back and forth, Socratic and very kind of interactive, your turn, my turn discussion. And I'm not so sure these, if you will, these blurbs, these 4 blurbs really captures them. So maybe it's not such a good summarizer in this instance, and perhaps it's challenged by Socratic dialogues, because we do know that ChatGPT or generative AI in general is good at summarizing maybe things that are more technical, or things that are not as philosophical, or things that are not conversations, right? So in this case, in the context of Plato's Republic, I would say that this is not an A+ example. Are there specific conversations that are central to this text? Please expand and explain them and cite them. Yes, there are specific conversations that are central to the text. And it says, oh yeah, one of them is in book 2, this dialogue between Socrates and Glaucon. And they discuss the nature of justice. And they have this long debate. Yeah, absolutely. Another one is Socrates and Adamanus in book 4. And then in books, so here it's so interesting. Furthermore, the conversation between Socrates and Glaucon in book 7. Okay, there is no book 7. There's only books 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Is crucial. So here is, I guess, a moment of confabulation or error. And again, it points out why we must be critical and careful of reading and interacting with the generative AI, even when we upload a specific document, because it is confabulating, or some people say make up, or people like to use the word hallucinate, but it's making up, I think, a citation here. They just, a citation. They discussed the allegory of the cave, which is actually one of the issues. So that is good. So on and so forth. You are an academic, so that's the voice I took on as a student. Here's the voice I took on as an academic scholar. I say, you're an academic scholar. Please suggest 5 test questions and 5 essay questions for use in course assignments. It does that. So certainly, here are 5 test questions. It gives us some multiple choice questions. It gives a true and false question. It gives us kind of fill in the blank question. It does a kind of a matching question. And then it has a short answer, a question, explain the significance of narrative style. Not that interesting. And then it has 5 essay questions, right? Discuss the importance of imitation, the role of dialectic, and what qualities Socrates thinks people should possess to govern. and then the role of the perfect guardian and the so-called philosopher king. Yes, okay, yes, maybe that's good. But it doesn't really, so I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it's asking me these questions, but what would the answers be? Like you've created these questions, what would the answers be? So I ask it, okay, please provide the answers. It says, okay, it kind of doesn't really answer these questions. It just gives me this kind of, I think, boilerplate kind of talk about the dialectic and things like that. So I go back and I repaste in the longer prompt. I go, you are an academic scholar, suggest these questions, and then also please provide answers to these, a sample essay answer, and says, okay, I can provide you some answers. And let's go back down to the test question answers. But it doesn't, right? It says, oh, sure, I can do that, it says. Right, it says, I cannot provide specific answers, and I don't have access to specific course content. I can only provide general guidance. So it kind of, it's stymied by my question. And I think what this shows is the prompt is wrong. If you wanted actually the answers, what you would do is you would ask the program to maybe outline or to summarize the debate between Glaucon and Socrates, for example. It would then do that. Then you would say, please create a question for that summary. So then you would have the answer to your question, right? So you'd have to approach it backwards. But in the way that I've prompted the question, it doesn't understand my question. And it just says, I don't have access to specific course content. And that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm actually just talking about the content that it does have access to, which is the 5 chapters. What it also does is it's able to cite, right? So let's go back to here. Okay, sorry about that. I was just lost in this document. Okay, so I thought I had asked it to cite, but I think I didn't. Maybe I had done it in another a document interaction. So what I've done is I've just typed in a new prompt. I say, so please explain the key features of Glaucon's conversation with Socrates and cite specific passages to illustrate your argument. Because one of the things that is important, I think, for us to know is it able to cite, because Humata and ChatDoc are both able to cite. Sherry AI can also cite. Ask Your PDF, I think, can also cite. And so it'd be good to know if it's able to cite specific passages, right? So there you go. So I asked it to explain the key features of Glaucon's argument or conversation with Socrates. Yes, Glaucon, known for his pugnacious nature, challenges him about the Socrates' interpretation about justice and injustice, so on and so forth. That's good. This is good. He's skeptical. Yes. Look, and there's the citing here. The machine quotes, then the many are of another mind. They think that justice is to be reckoned in the lowest class, not as desirable. Okay, I'm not sure if that is an important citation. I think I understand it in this context. And then there's a second citation, and then I think, and then it has the summary, so that's not bad. And then it has the sources. And so I think this is the part that is actually quite good, in the sense, if you click on the sources, it opens up actually the document on the left here. Here, I'm gonna have to close that. It opens the document up on the left, and then it tells you the page. So it's page 16, which is this, that it's quoting for that section. So it shows you actually the section. In Humata and in ChatDoc, it highlights it kind of like with a highlighter. Here, I guess it's pulling the quote out and showing you separately in this kind of pop-up window. But what is useful is that it also loads the document. Plato, you can see it 435 pages. So it's very, very large. And maybe that's the reason why some of the answers I don't feel are as strong as just general chat GPT 3.5 when you are interacting with a smaller chapter. Perhaps its attempt to parse all of that data, all 400 plus pages, is actually rounding off the edges and weakening, if you will, the specificity of the answers. And that leads me to believe that it's better probably to chunk up larger documents yourself and upload them and have specific interactions with smaller documents, as opposed to using FileGPT. And it's a great service in the sense it can look at larger documents, but I think it's losing its thread, right? Because what it is doing behind the scene is it's chunking up this giant document, 400 plus pages, into small chunks that GPT is able to accept. And then it's introducing your prompt, and then introducing that prompt to all of those chunks, and then reassembling it back within seconds to the user. So that's happening behind the scenes. And maybe that is, if you will, reducing the efficacy or the specificity of the answers. Yeah. But the power of it is, if it's done properly, it's able to introduce very, very large, long text to GPT, which GPT is unable to access, right? It has a very small kind of file size, right? It can only accept, if I'm not mistaken, 4,000. Is it 4,000 characters or 10,000 tokens? So it can't go beyond that limit. That's a structural limit to the way GPT was designed. And so this does, I think, it does provide value in the sense it's allowing you, the user, to upload a much larger book, if you will. It shows you the book on the left-hand page, the document that you have uploaded, and then it tells you where it's cited. So again, for the purposes of academic scholarship for both undergraduate students and perhaps graduate and, if you will, academic research, it is useful. It can be useful. I can certainly imagine uploading something like a much larger, longer document that perhaps, let's say, I don't have the time to read this summer the 25 books that have come out in my area, or the 25 academic articles. I do think, or longer articles that don't fit into, say, ChatDoc and Humata or ChatPDF, then this is actually a useful service. I don't think, again, I would say, I mean, I'm contradicting myself in a little bit in the sense, I don't think it's useful if you don't know enough about the subject, or that you haven't at the very least read some of the document, because you'll be lost, if you will. As with most interaction with GPT documents, you'll be lost unless you have some familiarity with the subject. And if you know what you're looking for, that as we know, it can be very powerful. If you know what you're looking for in using ChatGPT, it can really enhance your investigation or your digging for a specific item or a piece of knowledge. But if you don't know what you're looking for, then I'm not so sure it's not so good at being that executive assistant, right? Because you don't know what questions to ask. And when it gives you back those answers, you are unable to, if you will, insert yourself into that conversation, and you're unable to really understand whether that's a good answer and a useful answer for your research, or whether it's a misleading answer. So that's, I think, the danger of, this type of interaction. Okay. I said I would do one last thing. I think I said I would maybe look at this article, Postmodernism or late cultural logic of late capitalism, and just maybe ask it a few questions, right? I think already here, this is totally untrue. I loaded this up earlier, and the article is not focusing on camp and its relationship to the sublime. That shouldn't be the first sentence. That is wrong, I think. It's talking about how postmodernism, or this imagined frameworks, this kind of political economic framework of postmodernism, is, if you will, a stage of late capital. And I'm not so sure if this is reflecting that understanding. Okay, so let's say, please explain the key features of Jameson's argument and cite specific passages to support your argument. So I've done that. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so it's citing. I'll just move this. Oh, there you go. So Jameson's argument in the document revolves around the concept of postmodernism as a cultural dominant. Like, okay, so that's way better already. That's way better than this first sentence, which is very, very poor. Okay, that's night and day, right? He emphasizes the need to understand postmodernism as a historical phenomenon. Okay, one key feature, yes, okay, and then the machine cites current fantasies about salvation, nature, high technology, and chips through all fantasy. I didn't realize read it. Yes, I think that's, I don't know if that's page 33, but that's certainly a sentence I remember from the text. Another key feature of Jameson's argument in this exploration of dialectic view of historical development and change. He draws a Marxist, yes, correct. Okay, yeah, and then what are the sources? It's here, the ideology, and then it's here as well. So, okay, so there's two passages that it's identifying the two main passages that it is deriving the answers from. So in that sense, I think it's very good. Yeah, and one could also say, please present an outline of the key arguments, explained it step by step. You are an academic researcher. Let's see what it says with that. So again, it's about the specificity of the prompt. It's about asking the machine to explain something in a very clear and step-by-step fashion. That's, I think, very useful. That's a useful application, if you will, of any interface with ChatGPT. Introduction. Okay, again, it wants to talk about the camp and the sublime. Okay. Discuss. Oh, it's asking questions. Oh, this is a strange. Yeah, it is a strange summary. I don't like this summary whatsoever. Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, I feel that there's. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, I feel that there is, good and bad with this program, this FileGPT program. I do think that it's very useful in the sense that you can have the ability to upload very, very large files, a book, right? A book that's 400 pages. I don't think any of the other services allow for such large file uploads. And to be able to chat with an entire book, I think that's very powerful. The promise of that is very powerful, right? I'd be interested to upload perhaps in the future as a test, perhaps a novel, right? Like uploading a novel and then asking it to explain perhaps the narrative and the key features and the key characters in a novel. That would be interesting. But nonetheless, it's able to, if you will, beat this sort of file limitation, which is, if you will, been one of the limitations, big limitations for people wanting to use this type of AI interactive kind of reading that people have been wanting it, the ability to access and interact with larger documents. So big files, it can do big files, and then it also promised that it could do multiple files, which I will test out in a separate review. And then, of course, it's very useful because it can, just like Humata or ChatDoc or Ask Your PDF, I think Shari AI can do so as well. It cites, right? It's also citing. And so that's very useful for, again, a research perspective, or for studium, for study. It's very, very useful. It's citing the source and pointing you to, if you will, the page number. I do find that the other services which highlights it, I think that's, it seems like it's a more visual way for me, and a more kind of familiar way of seeing where it's from. I would like to have seen it out highlighted within the document. That, I think there's a kind of a graphical power and a usefulness, efficacy to that, which is missing. I think the pop-up window is a bit, in terms of from a user experience, it obstructs what's behind it, and I can't see my question, and I can't kind of see the PDF document either, because it's kind of stuck in, it's kind of obscuring, if you will, right? I'm trying to look around, if you will, the passage in this kind of three-dimensional way. I do think it's lacking in something. Like, I think even here in this last interaction that I had, I say, you know, can you try and help me? Can you help me with the key arguments? Can you kind of explain it to me step by step? And it gave me these strange kind of bullet points, which completely without any contextual kind of value. It doesn't explain it at all. In fact, it makes, if I didn't know anything about this document, I would just be more confused. Okay, so the context is a bit off. Now, of course, maybe that's my bad, in the sense that my prompt is weak. So maybe, you know, maybe I'm half to blame. I'm not sure, but I feel that I didn't feel that there was this type of off context voice or feeling to my interaction when I was using some of the other interfaces. You know, and I felt it's not just in this interaction with Frederick Jameson's article, but I think, as I think mentioned earlier in this video, I did feel it was a bit off in my interaction with the race chapter that I uploaded. And then I think it was also a little bit off in the interaction with Plato's Republic. But nonetheless, that's just a one-off interaction. I think if you tried with different articles or different chapters or different books, you know, your mileage may vary, as they say. But on the whole, I found my experience and interaction with FileGPT to be quite good. I'm very excited that you can chat with much larger documents that exceed the other competitors' page length. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty amazing. You could chat with a 400-page book. I guess I should try uploading the Bible and asking it tough questions. So that's it for today. So thank you for joining me. Hopefully you've got something out of this review. FileGPT, you know, something to keep an eye on. It seems like it's an interesting program, and it's one of many competitors in the field now. Okay, thanks very much.